Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Matt with Rocky's War Room, and today I have for you a comprehensive, well, maybe not a comprehensive, but a review of Combat Patrol World War II Skirmish rules. These are rules for the tabletop World War II skirmish actions with miniature figures. Now, this is a set of rules by a man named Buck Surdu. He actually has a YouTube channel if you'd like to go there. He explains a little bit further and in depth than what I'm going to on how the rules work. This rule set is uses a card-based system, which is actually the card-based system that he uses is pretty intuitive, and I'll show you guys that. This game overall, my overall impressions first off the bat after playing a game is I really liked it. In bolt action, it's a unit by unit based type of game where you fire from one unit upon to another unit and that unit loses figures. In, say, another popular game by the Two Fat Lardies, Chain of Command, it's based in fire teams, but it's still a team-based game. It's still a unit-based game. In this game here, this is done by fire teams and individuals. So each individual man will have an effect on the battlefield itself. And there's not a lot of charts. Matter of fact, I don't think there's any charts really in here, that hardly at all. And everything you need to play this game is on the cards. You need to grab maybe a few markers to designate wounds, to designate morale, little rubber band rings or dice, and you need some command dice to use to put on each one of the units. But that's just kind of a quick overview. And I've never really seen a miniatures game that worked quite like this. It's quick, it's easy to pick up. Once you get the symbology on the cards, it's no sweat. You're just flowing through the game. Things are happening, either bad or good, and there's lots of units on the board, and they're taking a lot of damage, or they're putting out a lot of damage, running to cover. It's just, in all, it's a great game. And he has two sets of rules in this game. He has the basic rules, which run through the basic game, and then he has a whole slew of optional rules that you can add or not add if you want to or not. He designed this game to be simple, but you can make it as complex as you want it. Like adding as an example, a radius for your leaders. You know, it's totally optional to where if they're not in radius of the leader, then they'll, suffer some penalties for that, or they have to come back. There's all kinds of different option rules that you can add to the game that actually adds, I think it adds more depth. But like I said, it's just, you can either add as much as you want or or just play the straight basic game with the cards. Now, when you buy this rule book, you can get it from On Military Matters or Sally Forth if you're in the UK. And it comes with this rule book and two decks of cards. And these two decks of cards are completely identical. It's a 50 card deck. This one here and this one here. Now the colors will vary. I can't remember exactly what colors I got with this because I've got 10 different colors and 10 different sets of these cards, but they're all the exact same thing. On the back, they're just different colors on the top because you would hand this to one player, hand this to the other player, and they'd play off those decks as they're playing. You also get the activation deck, which has his trademark gamer. Guts, accuracy, melee, endurance, reaction. These are kind of the stats for each one of your units. Guts is just basically whether you're regular, green, or it's your morale, whether you're regular, green, or elite troops. And then the A is accuracy. That's how good you are. It'll be either a green, regular, or elite status at shooting. Melee is any bonuses to melee when you're inside a melee. The endurance is basically their life points or their hit points that they can take. There's two different types of way they can take damage. If they take one wound, say the most common endurance is three points of endurance, or 3. And if they take 3 wounds, then they become incapacitated and are removed from the game. If they become incapacitated, that's worth 3 points of damage or endurance, and that means that they're gone out of the game. And then there's reaction. Now, anybody in this game, and I know that there's a lot of gamers out there that I have spoke to that have played some World War II miniature games, and there's no reaction fire. So, you know, a lot of people say that's a make or break part of a game. For me, it's not, but it is included in this game. Reactions, anyone can react to anyone's movement and fire upon that unit in this game. You just have a stat for it because you have to draw a card and get under that value, whatever your reaction value is, in order to perform that reaction on an enemy movement, to be able to shoot at them. So that's just kind of what that means. These are the stats that you have for each one of your units, and there will be a value, or as far as guts and accuracy, it'll be a letter of either green, regular, or elite troops. So what's on these cards? This is the activation deck. At the beginning of a turn, you'll draw the first activation card. It'll either be a 1 through 6. There's red 6s, or there's red, there's black numbers, and there's a reroll and reshuffle card. When this card comes up, that's the end of the turn. You reroll your dice and you reshuffle your cards. We'll talk about the hold command dice and how this works in a minute. All right, so we'll put those down. And then these two decks of cards that you get, they're identical, 50 cards, the same exact thing. And they have all these neat little pictures and bullet points and a bayonet up here and these blue bars and this 10-sided die and a wound locator, crew bails out, some cover points, morale's down here. So these cards have everything you need on them to play this game. Everything's done with a flip of a card. There's really no dice. And I know that's off-putting, but give it a chance and hang in there and let me show you how this works. And you might change your mind. I did. I said, wait, there's no dice rolling? There actually is some dice rolling, but it's not where you think it is. But each one of these decks is exactly the same. So there's two. The only thing that's different is the different back. So if you were playing Americans, you'd hand the Americans this player and the Germans this player, or whatever you're playing for that turn. So that's what you get if you go to On Military Matters. You'll get a set of cards, the activation deck. There's actually other cards in here too that they added, like the green card, the elite card, and things like that. But they're pretty much self-explanatory. I just don't have them in here right now. There's also some blue numbers, and those are for heroes, another optional rule. But I digress. So, and then these two sets of cards, you'll get an activation deck. You'll have everything you need to play in one purchase. So, 2 players. And I bought extra decks. You can go to Drive-Thru RPG and get some extra different colored back cards. So you can have multiplayers. This game plays very well with 4 players. I played a 4-player game, and it went really smoothly. And each one of the players, they had 2 armies on the table. One controlled one platoon, the other one controlled the other platoon, and they were both on the same side. But they both had different decks of cards, so it worked out fairly well. So now I know you're saying, "What's in the book?" I know I would be at this point. Well, when we opened it up, we got some nice pictures of the cards and some soldiers on the street with their command dice next to them, and kind of, you know, a little display and the opening page with a nice, I would like to acknowledge the thoughtful comments and suggestions that I've received from various members of Hartford area weekly Hawks members of the Hawks group, and the copyright of 2015. So then we got the table of contents, which is very useful if you're looking for something. And then it comes to the first page, which is the Quickstart Rules. Which the Quickstart Rules, if you're just jumping into this game, it's a perfect start. It has the most basic actions that you can do in this game. This is the way where you could go this far with the Quickstart Rules and just stop there and just play with those rules, and it'd be a fun game. But you can add, like I said, add rules, subtract rules, what have you, with the optional rules. But It tells you here, it says, welcome to the system, and a quick start guide is a combat patrol describes infantry combat. The full rules describe higher levels and individuality and resolution. So this game can be played in 3 different ways as far as resolution goes. You can take it as deep as you want or as simple as you want, like I've said. This tells you about figure unit and attributes, what they mean, like guts, accuracy, melee, endurance, reaction. And they also tell you what their normal stats would be or right about there. Then, of course, game components, things you need to play. You need the data sheets, which look like this right here. These are the data sheets I was talking about. We'll get back to that in a minute. You need the six-sided order dice are used as part of the double random activation mechanism, which is copyrighted. And there's optional 10-sided dice to determine the maximum movement distance. So the unit data sheets, the various markers, the action deck, the activation deck. The action deck would be this deck right here. These are the action decks. And some 6-sided dice, some markers, preferably blue, and if you want to use blue and red, that works for me. On the ammunition, if they're stunned, you need a marker for that. You'll figure it out for the most part. And it goes right into activation and how activation works. It's pretty intuitive. When a unit activates, the only player announce what each figure will do. Not what fire team, not what unit, but each figure. So that's strange. That's a little unusual, but trust me on this. Stay with me. You'll see. And then the player executes those orders, and he cannot change his mind later on in the turn after seeing the results of the actions. So when the unit activates, each figure in the unit may perform a single action. Allowable actions are move, shoot, throw a grenade, recover from stun, reload, or rally. The only action that a stun figure can execute is to recover from stun. So if they're stunned for whatever reason by shooting from another unit, then the only action that one figure can do is become unstunned. So, but they can move as individuals, which is so wild to me. At first, it was pretty holy smokes that every man matters. Every man is an individual in this game, which is really cool. Then it goes and talks about movement and straight into shooting. So as you can see, it explains and breaks down the card system and what everything means. So you guys can see that, like personal wounds. This one here is a hit randomizer, 10-sided dice right here, the movement arrow. This right here is a modifier. This is the modifiers to shooting. These are the hit indicator section where the bullet points here. There's a bayonet here. It also shows a random direction movement. You got your morale here and your cover. This covers where the tank is hit. This, covers where HE burst effects, whether or not you get one drawn or not. But we'll go into that a little bit. And then it has a little review of the small arms attributes of medium, short, long. We'll get a little close up. The short, medium, and long range, your penetration value, and the hand-to-hand combat bonuses. So it goes into shooting. It's pretty extensive. I'll show you guys an example of that in a minute. So let's zoom out here. He's got great examples of shooting here, a really good example of shooting here, which I'll show you on the table here. It's a very easy step process. Now it talks about when you in this game, you don't fire at a unit. Like bolt action, you say you pick a unit, you fire at that unit. What's the other game? Chain of command, you fire on towards a unit itself, and then it spreads out among units. Well, this one's kind of works the same way, where you fire at an area. So you take the frontage of your unit, let's say it's 10 inches wide, and you multiply that by 1.5, so 15, and 15 inches wide. So you're shooting in an area way ahead, 15 inches wide and 4 inches deep. So that's how you kind of tell what a target area. You just say, I'm going to shoot at that target area, and you could be hitting multiple fire teams based on the randomization of the action deck right here. So I'll show you guys that on the table as well. Arcs of fire. They can shoot. Anybody can shoot 180 degrees ahead of them. Anywhere 180 degrees ahead of them. Line of sight. As long as you can see, when firing into woods, the target must be within 1 inch of the wood line. So you can't fire at anything deeper than 1 inch of the wood line. Let's see. To fire out of a building, the shooter must be at a window, door, or other aperture. Oh, what's the other thing? In combat, line of sight is traced from the string or a laser pointer, and I have a laser pointer. And if the string bends or is intervening terrain, the line of sight is blocked. So a firing figure does not have to have line of sight to every figure in the target area or to the figure that is randomly selected when it's resolving attacks. So basically, all you got to do is see one of them. Computing range. So your range, you look at the weapon, how far away it is. If it's in short, medium, or long range will be based on the modifiers you get when you draw the action cards. You can run out of ammunition in this game as well. And if you get the out of ammunition card out of the action deck, that means that you have to spend your turn, your next turn, that figure has to spend unjamming his gun or reloading the weapon. Then he goes into melee, and he has a really good example of throwing grenades here. But melee is really simple. It's hand-to-hand combat, and it occurs when 2 or more opposing figures come base-to-base contact. You take that melee stat, and you have a series of modifiers to it, and you hit just like you do shooting. And I'll get into more of that when we get over to the table. And then it talks about throwing grenades, and you use these small templates. Now, these small templates, never fear. You just go up to your local copy shop, and here's all the templates, the small, medium, and large templates. And you just put them on cardstock, you cut them out, and they're actually very resilient. They work great. I have one somewhere, and I must have left it over on the table. I'll show you guys that when we get over there. But I put it on cardstock, and it works wonderful. And this is for the grenades. Now, this is the sheet. This is the basic sheet. This is the most basic sheet that you can have here. These are the hand grenades. These are anti-tank grenades. The unit name, leader name. You write down all your weapons, and here's the gamer stats, remember. Guts, accuracy, melee, endurance, and reaction. And you will have, for your unit, you'll have a set of numbers in the first box here. A set of numbers on the melee, endurance, and these will be the measure of morale. Elite, green, or regulars up in here. And your guts you use for morale purposes, and your accuracy you use for firing purposes. And when you're putting in your weapons, you just put the short, medium, and long range, their penetration value, and their hand-to-hand combat bonus. Or modifier, because they could be a negative. So a medium machine gun is going to have a -2 in hand-to-hand. So, and these cards are in the back as well. You can do hard cardstock or just on straight paper. They're right here. You have just basic. You have a medium resolution, which means you have a little bit more to keep track of on your guys, or high resolution, where you track each individual could have different stats all the way through. And while you're at it, making copies of these, you might as well make copies of the tanks, because you'll need those later. Tanks, I won't be going over in this review. But they work pretty well. It's not that hard to understand them. That'll be in a future episode. I will go over tanks, but right now, my review is just infantry based. So after that, it goes over guts and morale. So whenever a figure is wounded or incapacitated, its leader must the leader figure will occur a morale marker. So these stack up. So if the more you guys get wounded, the more morale markers he has. And before performing any actions, when that unit is activated, if it has morale markers on it, it must draw from the action deck for each morale marker occurred, and you consult the morale check at the bottom of the card, which is right here on the bottom here. So this one here, just to give you an example, he will draw this. Is that the best you got? So the whole unit is unaffected. Regular units remove all remaining morale pips. So this card right here would be great to get, because if you have 5 morale pips on the die are on your, if you, they're all gone, and your morale is back. It's like, they fired at us, they devastated us, we're going to get them back, by not showing fear. And then, it talks about recovering from stun, and then reaction fire, and then a summary of the whole entire basic rules. So as you can see, it's only like 8 pages of rules. And really, they're not rules. It just kind of explains what the symbols do and things like that. And then they give you this neat little sample scenario where they write out all the sheets, so you don't have to do a ton of work if you don't want to. And these are just examples of all the weapons in each unit. SMG, a BAR, a pistol, hand grenades. So you write down the hand grenades there and their value. And you do have grenades. It says yes or no, whether or not you have grenades. And then after, it tells you victory conditions, gives you a few pictures. And after all that, it has the advanced and optional rules. So there's additional detail about activations and how they work. Append units, handicapping things if you have to, removing the reshuffle card. You can remove that as an option if you'd like, because when you're activating, there's a reroll and reshuffle, which means that you'd have to reshuffle the whole activation deck and reroll all the command dice. And that'll make more sense in a little bit when I show you guys on the table. More about reaction fire, how many figures are in the target area. That just explains what I was talking to you about, the 15 inches and the 4 inches deep. And it gives you examples of cover and how cover works. And it's saying additional information, meaning that these are add-ons, advanced rules for the game. And when they say optional, that means they're ones that you can optional, like command radii or radius. These are optional rules that you can add to the game to make it more your style. So, but for the most part, there's just concealment, information about running out of ammunition, who's carrying what. The soldiers carrying key weapons or pieces of equipment must be designated in the game. So you have to make sure that you designate if they don't have the specific weapon on them, nobody can tell. You need to designate them somehow. And then there's fields of fire for windows. It shows you how far out you can see out a window. We ran into that when we played. Throwing or launching grenade through apertures. Let's see. Retiration of the rules on HE effects. Crew served weapons. So multiple soldiers to move or operate them. So this right here, if you're carrying a light machine gun, right? This tells you what to do with the units, like the ammunition carrier or the ammo carrier or the assistant gunner, and things like that. What they can and cannot do, mortars and light mortars and things like that. And then you have the optional rule for command radius, leaders and morale, leaders death, what happens. Hey, the card never came up, optional rule. You even have spotting rules, which are optional. There is a die, spotting die that you can get and use. You can have spotting rules, which I have not played with those yet. I'm not a huge fan of the spotting rules, and so that's great. It's an optional rule. They actually have snipers, landmines, flamethrowers with flamethrower template right here, printed out on cardstock. You've got it. And moving fire. So the moving fire column shift modifier is applied to firing in one of these 3 cases. So they tell you some rules for smoke, high explosive blowing holes in buildings, indirect fire from mortars and things like that, the optional rule for indirect fire. And then you have your multiple levels of resolution. And he explains how this works, where you can have heroes in your game. At the highest level resolution, some figures may be designated as heroes. And the greatest part about this game that I found is that you carry these cards with you, and you can mark down how many times they died, or how many times you won a game with them. This, Billy Bob here did the best last game. He's my man. He's my hero. And there's options for medics to be put into these units and things like that. So these different resolutions add something to the game, just something more, like a middle complexity record. And this is a high complexity record. So you can play this at any level for the most part. Experience and improving figures ratings. So you can use this right here as in a campaign, game to game to game, where you can replacing incapacitated soldiers when they die, improving attributes. So kind of a small mini campaigning system. And then weapon penetration and cover tells you what happens here. And then it gets to the meat and potatoes about vehicles. All the vehicles will have a stat card like this. He tells you how exactly to move your vehicle. About the crew, there's an actual crew inside the tank instead of just being a tank and it blows up and it's gone. In this whole section here, vehicles and anti-tank gun shooting. This is all vehicles. They have a stat card just like this. I'll show you guys. We have a stat card like this, and on the stat card, a vehicle hit resolution chart right here, which makes things real easy with all the symbols and the numbers, and based on where they're hit and what happens. So this is a chart that you'll need. So if a card is drawn where it says mobility killed, the vehicle may not move or pivot for the remainder of the game. So there you go. Draw of a card, you figure that out. So we have that. Towed anti-tank guns, minefields, infantry close assaults on vehicles, weapon backblast, concussive effects, to button or not to button. The vehicle and the hatches are closed. The vehicle is considered to be buttoned up. Yeah. Indirect fire effects on vehicles, riding on vehicles. You can ride on vehicles. There's an optional rule for that. And finally, it talks a little bit about armor, guns and penetration and movement. Some further rules for vehicles. So all in all, 34 pages. A lot of them are optional rules, and some of them are advanced or additional rules to the rules that are out there. Then he gives us those templates, those blast templates. And then here is something you can print out as well. This tells you where the crew is at on each type of vehicle. So a 5-man crew, 4-man crew. Because when you hurt a tank or truck or half-track, you have to you hurt the guys inside too, based on where it blows up. So when you're randomizing who you hurt with a card, you will count from left to right, 1, 2, 3, 4, like you would a normal shooting, which you guys will see here in a little bit. You'll randomize who gets hit, and if the vehicle blows up, those guys will jump out. Whether they take damage will be a draw of the card. And here's those sheets, those reference sheets. And then the very back is all the vehicles and weapons data for German vehicles, Russian vehicles, American vehicles, British vehicles, French vehicles, and all the weapons that are attached to them. And anti-tank weapons, generic anti-tank weapons, Italian vehicles, Japanese. It's pretty extensive. And some more pictures in some beautiful pictures that he has of playing the game. That's Buck right there, I believe. I think I recognize that man from the videos. So there you have it. That's the rule book. It's not that tough to read in one night. You can actually just read the basic rules and stop there. But we're going to take this one step further because I'm really excited to show you guys exactly how this game works and why I like it so much. So you can actually see the gameplay and the mechanics. So I will be right back to show you guys some of that. Thank you guys for joining me for part 1 of Combat Patrol. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Please tell a friend. Please spread the word. I'd really appreciate it. And join me in my next video, which is part 2, where I explain the rules while playing through a couple of turns. Last but not least, from me to you, ta-ta!